First of all, we got to address the teacher shortage. Why are so many people not going into education? That's the first crisis. Second of all is, we need more black male teachers. And so I think Delaware State becomes a critical piece to solving this puzzle, because it's how do we direct more black men to go into education?
Okay. I got my guy here with me. First, let me give him a little slight intro. It's your boy Malcolm Mox everywhere. Y'all know the vibes. Y'all know how I do. So I want to introduce to you guys my guy, my bro, my LDI cohort brother, and just a great black man doing great things in the community. My guy, Brandon Brice, man. Talk to the people. Let them know who you are, what you doing, what we talking about tonight.
Brandon Brice, advocate and warrior and champion for school choice and education reform for our kids, making sure our kids get a quality education, not just an education. And tonight we're going to talk about a very important topic around what I say, fixing the damn schools.
So let's just jump right on into it, Brandon. When you say let's give a high overarching viewpoint of what you mean when you say fixing these damn schools, and then we'll kind of like go a little bit deeper into that. So give the folks a high overarching understanding of what you mean when you say let's fix these damn schools.
So, I live in the great state of Delaware, and it's interesting because we were the first state, but we're in last place. And so think about that for that phrase, first state, last place. And what's interesting is that when you talk about the amount of money and funding that as a state we spend about $17,900 per pupil, and we're literally in 46th place. Now let's look at a place like Massachusetts. They spend about 17.5, a little bit less than us, and they're in the top 3. So what is it that Massachusetts is doing that Delaware is not doing? The other thing is when you talk about, I had an opportunity to meet with one of the Little Rock Nine, and he said something very—
That's major.
I did. He did. He spoke at the Wilmington Library. And one of the things that was mentioned one of the things that came out of that is he said, in the 50s, we couldn't get into schools.
Mm-hmm.
Now we can't get out of failing schools.
Ooh.
So you couldn't get in. Now they won't let you out. And so when we talk about parental choice and giving kids options, we got to start to take this serious, because whether you like it or not, education reform, school choice, parental choice, getting parents involved in their children's education is the civil rights issue of our time.
Yep.
And what's interesting is bad education, education that's failing, it doesn't discriminate, but it is the difference. As a mother once told me out of Camden, New Jersey, it is the difference between a kid going to college and being successful or a kid going to prison. Quality education matters.
So let's just kind of go in depth about this a little bit. Talk a little bit about resource allocation and how resources are distributed here in Newcastle County and how they're distributed in Kent versus Sussex. Talk a little bit to why this is so important and why it's affecting folks in Wilmington and Newcastle County.
So, it's interesting. You would think that the worst schools, in many cases, based on performance, you would think the best schools, the schools that are performing, and let me be very clear on this, because there are performing public schools. I want to be very clear. A quality school is a quality school. And so I don't want to discriminate, but we got to address the fact that our kids don't have time for the bureaucrats to get it right. Mm-hmm. I heard an elected one day say, well, it took us 10 years to get into this problem. And, it's going to take us 10 more years to get out of this problem. Well, I don't know about you, but I don't know if my kid doesn't have that time to get out.
We don't have that type of time.
We don't have that time. And so parents they need a solution today. They need a solution now. And so I go back into, it's amazing that in some cases, schools that are performing at the lowest tenure get the most funding.
Mm-hmm.
Now, here's the problem with that. Some will say, well, it's just it's a money issue. But what's ironic is that when you look at schools in Sussex County, some schools in Kent County, they're getting half of what students are getting up here, and they're performing in double and triple digits.
Mm-hmm.
So it's proven it's not the money that is the problem. The other thing is that when you talk about the quality of schools, I've always said it's important that we not only look at how do we get more teachers, which there's a teacher shortage, that's a whole nother topic of conversation, but how do we get more teachers of colors, more men of color to become teachers? That matters, because when we're talking about what is it, when a student who's already going to school, in some cases, hungry, tired, dealing with social issues, and dealing with a whole set of issues that in some cases their counterparts in the suburbs aren't dealing with. Our kids are super with the fact that they can still succeed and deal with the challenges that they deal with every day. And so we've got to look at the fact that, and I give it up to teachers, those teachers who are performing. I give it up to them because we're asking teachers in some cases to be everything but what their job entails. They're the social worker. They're in some cases, the guardian. They're the sponsor. They're the mental health worker. I mean, these teachers are taking on amazing responsibilities that in some cases, it's not in their job description. And so we've got to rethink this whole concept of quality education. I was a big proponent of those failing school districts. How do we turn them into trade schools? We got a shortage. The reality that everybody's going to college is a falsehood. Everybody shouldn't go to college. There are shortages. Malcolm, right now today, if your car breaks down, who's going to fix your car?
I'm definitely somebody who I know has the skills, and that has nothing to do with college at all.
If your toilet breaks down, you're in trouble.
Same difference.
If your, furnace or HVAC breaks down. So my point is, we've got to start to address the jobs that matter, that are paying today. And there's nothing against college. I think college is great. College is important, but we've got a need in America. And so we've got to start looking at the quality of education very different than we've looked at it before. And it starts with school choice, but it starts with parental choice, getting the parents involved in what their kids are learning, getting the parents involved to make sure that kids are doing homework. It's the little things that have big impacts.
So if you could go more in depth about school choice, parental choice, how do you feel as though school choice could potentially change the landscape of Delaware education? Because school choice is somewhat of a controversial issue here in Delaware, not just in Delaware, but as a whole. Talk a little bit more about what school choice is and how school choice can have a positive effect on Delaware education.
Malcolm, at the end of the day, a child's outcome should never be determined on the neighborhood that they grew up in. And I can't say that's not the case in America today. Today, we can literally look at a child and determine, based on where they live, based on where they grew up, what their projected outcome will be based on the level of economic stimulus in the community, based on the level of crime in the community. And what choice is it's empowering parents. I go back to this parental thing. It's empowering parents to say, damn it, fix the damn schools. And if my kid is not getting a quality education, then I have the right to take them out of a failing school and put them into a school that is successful, that is showing results. And again, that's why I said we got to give credit to those schools in the city that are showing results, but we need more. And in addition to that, when we talk about, again, this concept of choice, and what does that mean? Is that rich kids shouldn't be the only ones that have choice and options. And so I think this is something that, it's near and dear to me because I grew up in a household where my cousins lived with me at the time, and I went to one school, they went to another, and our lives are totally different. And so I've seen the power of school choice, and when parents are able to pay for a quality education. And for those parents who can't, then we've got to have the serious conversation about vouchers, and actually vouchers that can help flip the majority of the bill of what the cost of education is today. A parent's best and greatest investment is their kid.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I want you to talk about those vouchers. How do we fund those vouchers? Where do they come from?
Malcolm, that's an excellent question, because again, I go back to, when we're talking about the state creating Opportunity Scholarship Act programs and funding for programs like that, one big issue is, does the money follow the kid or stay at the school? And my thoughts, it should always follow the parent and the child. Again, I go back to, does the state value its parents? Does the state value the quality of education that Black and brown parents are getting? And does it say, it doesn't matter if you are super wealthy or if you are, if you live in a zip code where you can get, where that's low income. Every kid should have a fighting chance when it comes to getting a quality education that's going to prepare them for this new global economy. I mean, just imagine, how can you code if you can't do simple math?
Mm-hmm. That's a fact.
How can you do the skilled trades, which requires math? So to me, it's not just an investment in people, it's an investment in the future of Delaware. It's an investment on communities, because the reality is there are two options in life. My grandmother used to say that idle time is the devil's playground.
Devil's playground. My grandma said the same thing.
So either, we can't have this mindset that says, well, that's their problem over there, because their problem will one day become your problem. So this education piece becomes so important when we're talking about making sure that kids can read by third grade.
That's important.
Critical. This is how a society, you show me a failed community, and I will show you a failed education system.
I'm drawing two things from what you just said. So let's go back to the conversation around trades. Talk about why these trade programs are essential to not just the overall state of Delaware, but just to the global economy, right? And then once you kind of talk about that, you spoke about having kids learning how to read and learning math by a certain age. Talk about the critical points which early childhood care and that early education. Talk about those. Why is that so critical, and why aren't we investing more into it, or should we be investing into early childhood development differently?
So early childhood has a couple of components. We are getting it back. We are getting it right in the area of early child development and more funding going towards early child development. But once you get past early child development, what about youth development? What about the fact that, again, I go back to say, what the best policy to support education is, Malcolm?
What?
Fatherhood. Because when you have a father figure and he's making sure that you're doing your homework, when he's there to make sure that there's correction to keep you out of the streets, to keep you focused on your books, to keep you focused on walking the straight and narrow. I love my dad to pieces, but my dad didn't play. And so part of that is fatherhood matters. It's more than just, being an extra income in the household, which also is important, because that's how you can also afford to go to a quality school. But fatherhood is the key ingredient to changing the dynamics of this education crisis that we have here in Delaware. The other the other thing is, you asked earlier about, what are some of the things that are, why is the skilled trades piece so important? Here's the reality. I come from Detroit, a place that is the labor, the pinnacle of the labor movement in America, right? This is more than about skilled trade jobs in Delaware, Malcolm. This is about bringing Delaware's middle class back. This is about creating an opportunity where you no longer have the have-nots, but you got the have-wills, and you got those folks who are willing to have a little slice of the American dream and that piece of pie that we used to call, the American dream of a house, a car, maybe a boat on the weekend. And so the problem is what we're seeing that fade away in these United States. But I'll tell you, the skilled trades and getting more people of color and black and brown women in the trades helps us to recreate Delaware's middle class and America's middle class at that. And so this it's more than just how do we fill jobs that need to be filled, because here's the reality. The jobs are here. The question is, do we have the talent to fill the jobs? That's a different question.
Because workforce development is such a crazy important topic here in Delaware. So when you talk about having those skills in order to fulfill these jobs, how are we developing the people that have these skills to fulfill these jobs?
The market is here. I mean, here, the Industrial Revolution, the technological revolution, rather, it's here. So the question is, how do we prepare the next generation of Delawareans or Wilmingtonians, whatever you want to call them? How do we prepare them to be competitive, to be ready for those jobs? And I'll say, if you don't invest in education, it will not happen. And if you don't create alternative forms of opportunities in education, which is skilled trades, getting young people exposed to those things like HVAC at an early age. I think we've waited too long. We've waited until they're just graduating to start having the conversations around workforce development and trades. We need to be talking about that in sixth grade, getting them prepared at sixth grade, seventh grade, eighth grade. And here's the catch. I go back to this fatherhood piece. The irony is that if a child does not have a father figure in his household, the likelihood that, when in the suburbs, little Johnny, him and his dad go work on the car in the summer. They go work on the roof. They go work on the house. But here's the catch. If a kid is not exposed to that, you're not going to be exposed. And I can tell you, that's not a career that folks are going to be running to when they're 18 or 19.
No, they don't.
It's something that comes up with you. Even if you don't, for those folks who grew up in the suburbs, even if you don't go into the trades, but if you've been working on a house since you were 12 years old with your dad, or working on a car, or working on the roof, or working on the furnace, you're already acclimated to what it means to have work. And I can tell you something, when we talk about education, we talk about, well, why is education failing? Well, part of it is, when we talk about America's work ethic, and what does that look like today? When you were 13 or 14 and you had a paper route, what did a paper route teach you? It taught you how to get up in the morning. It taught you supply and demand. It taught you how to customer service. It taught you things that are now preparing you for the workforce. The question is, what happens? And so I'm an early advocate of young people working because it prepares them for the future. But again, you got to know how to read. You got to know how to do simple math. You got to count the money. And so these are the things that matter when we're talking about fixing the damn schools.
What's up, guys? Are you into gaming content? Are you into business or entrepreneurial content? Maybe you just really love tech and you want to talk about that too. Well, guess what? You found the right place. It's your boy Malcolm. Malcolm Locks Everywhere. You know the vibes. If you want to know more about gaming, entrepreneurship, business, or tech, you came to the right place. So make sure you guys follow me, Malcolm Locks Everywhere, for all your gaming, business, entrepreneurial, and tech information that'll really feed your soul. So when we talking about fixing these damn schools, there's a couple of things that I want to, there's a couple of questions that I want to pose to you as we're talking about this, right? So what can Delaware do? How can we attract and retain qualified and experienced teachers in these particular schools that need these upbringings of these children? Well, actually, I'll just leave that one. I'll ask you that question, and then I'll go on to the next. But once again, how can we attract and retain qualified and experienced teachers in these school settings that can really teach our kids, whether it be in alternative trades or whether it just be in the public schools as a whole?
First of all, we got to address the teacher shortage. Why are so many people not going into education? That's the first crisis. Second of all is, we need more Black male teachers. And so I think Delaware State becomes a critical piece to solving this puzzle, because it's how do we direct more Black men to go into education, K through 12, as well as higher education. Mm-hmm. The other piece to that is we've got to be very strategic about curriculum. Now, let me be very clear. I'm not against, I support Black curriculum being taught in school. I think that's important. But the reality is, when we're talking about building infrastructure, what builds societies? Math and science. And the irony is we created math and science. So I think we've got to be very intentional about those core education sets that every child should learn and know. Reading, writing, arithmetic, how to write, how to articulate, critical writing, how to do basic mathematics, algebra, calculus, derivatives, fractions. How do we get into, when we're talking about reading, and not just reading just to read for the test, but do you actually understand what you're reading?
And comprehension.
Are you able to comprehend what it's saying? And are you able to have your own opinion? Mm-hmm. I go back to, it's not the school's mission to indoctrinate or push what they want you to learn. It's important for them to teach you how to learn and teach you to have your own mind of explaining what you read and what it means to you. That's education. So I think that was a lot, but I think those are the initial things that we can begin to do to chip away and to fix our schools. And then the other thing is we've got to champion those teachers that are quality-based teachers. We've got to support them. They've got a tough job.
I agree. 100% agree. And with that being said, what types of trainings can we provide to teachers to better address the needs of these students that are, socioeconomically impacted every day, that's walking into these schools? Like, is there a specific type of training? Should we be investing more into the training? What should we be doing to really cultivate this teacher? Well, to address the needs of the teacher shortage, but then actually cultivate these teachers.
I think this is less a conversation just about teachers, more on the corporation's role with getting involved in education as an investment tool. I'll give you an example. Field trips. I used to love field trips when I was in.
I used to go on field trips all the time.
Because you know why field trips were important? Because it connected what I learned in the classroom with real world stuff. So I could touch it, I could feel it, I could read it. And so we need to talk about, what are the strategic partnerships of how do we get more funding for field trips? How do we get more resources for co-op programs, exploring program? I think the Scouts does an excellent job of how do we start exposing young people as early as 12 years old, 14 years old to careers. And so when we ask a student, well, what do you want to be when you grow up? We actually can create the pipeline to get them there. One of the challenges that some of the youth police cadet programs have is they're saying, well, we want to hire more people in the fire department and police departments, but they got to pass background checks. Here's the reality, Malcolm. If you're already in the system at 14, it's just a matter of, do you want to do this or not? So I think when we talk about education, on top of fixing the schools and fixing the quality of testing, which is crazy for some folks to say we don't think you should test. We have to test to get a driver's license. You
Yes,
got to test to become, a firefighter. I mean, that's insane. That's one part of how we prepare students for their careers.
Do you think some of the testing that's implemented is biased?
Well, it's interesting. I go back to how are we teaching to the test? And I can tell you, there is a disconnect in some cases in classrooms where you have a teacher that is either not from the community or doesn't understand the kids that they're serving. Again, which is why I go back to the need for more African-American teachers, but more male teachers, because there's an understanding there. I grew up, people don't realize I grew up in Southwest Detroit. I grew up in the streets. I come from the streets, but it gave me an education because I had two parents, again, parental involvement, that cared about my education. And they said, and in my household, failure was not an option, right? Mm-hmm. And so I go back to, this is why it's so important when we're talking about partnerships around education, whether it's funding field trips, whether it is creating corporate relationships, because it goes back to what a child will see is what a child will be. My father literally became a state trooper because when he was 9 years old, he met a black state trooper that looked like him. And so presentation matters. What you see matters. And so that's one part of how do we fix the schools, is we've got to give kids hope to say that, again, you may live in a zip code that may have challenges, but that doesn't mean you can't be the rose that grew out of the concrete.
100% agree. And now with these roses growing out the concrete, that concrete is something interesting about that concrete, right? Which leads me to my next question in terms of policy reforms. Like, what type of policy reforms are needed at the local level, at the state level, at the federal level, that could really address some of these systemic issues that are faced by some of these schools that we are seeing get, just the lack of resources every single day?
So first of all, let's start here. If your elected official is supporting failing schools, and we know who you are, and they're sending their kid to a quality school, that's the first problem. Because what it's saying is, if you're going to stand by something, stand by it all the way. To tell a parent that you got to send your kid to a failing school, but I'm not sending mine because I have the resources, that's just not right. And so stand by it. And so, again, I go back to, next time you speak to your elected official, find out where they send their kid and then look at their voting record. Let's start there. The other part to that is we've got to start creating opportunities where parents can't wait. They can't wait. And so whether we need to turn a failing school into a trade school, which is necessary, these are all innovative things that we can do, because here's the reality. A trade is something that a kid can have for the rest of their lives, or whether they're male or female. And we've got a shortage. When you talk about, African Americans right now in Delaware make up less than 2% of the skilled trades. When we start to get into the numbers. And so, when you talk about electricians, HVAC, welders, pipe fitters, they need people. And so, and these are good paying jobs. I mean, imagine, I went to college and I had X amount of debt, but imagine getting a job out of college, making 60, 70, 80,000 a year, starting off with no debt. With no debt.
That would be major.
That is building the middle class.
That's major. That is major. That's major. Being able, if I was in a position to be able to graduate from Seton Hall without any debt, that would have did something to my life. Even moving forward all the way, since I've been out of school for such a long time, like even to these days, right? That would have did something for me. So I completely understand, that notion. Whereas like, if we were in a position to have kids graduate out of college with a trade and have no debt, along with potentially a degree, that's a ball game right there.
Malcolm, but again, I go back. at the end of the day, you still got to be able to read up to grade level. You still got to be able to do simple math up to grade level. You still got to be able to understand and comprehend what you're reading. And this is why education is the foundation and the civil rights issue of our time. Because here's the reality. You know, when we think about who's succeeding right now, African Americans right now, you know, literacy wise, when we talk about math rates, we're about 21%. Our white counterparts are about double that, but they're even in dire straits. You know, they're at around 46%. But who's succeeding? When we talk about, you know, the Asian and Indian communities, they're reading at 60 and 70% grade level. So I'm asking, what are those communities doing differently that we are not doing, where their kids are reading and doing sufficient math and quality math? And I go back to, it's the family. There's an expectation. And I think as people of color, we've got to make an expectation. The standard is quality education. It is not, you should be reading by third grade. You should be writing essays and knowing how to write a decent essay, you know, by middle school and high school. And these things should be standards. And so I go back to, you know, once we solve the issue around some of the teacher shortages, we've got to want to invest in our kids in 2023 and 2024. Education, to me, a teacher is the greatest position ever, because you are literally inspiring minds and changing the world, where you're preparing people to sustain themselves.
So if you guys have a moment, I need you to stop by my Twitch channel. My Twitch channel needs some help, y'all. So go ahead and subscribe to my Twitch. Go today, Malcolm Locks on Twitch. Make sure you go. All of my gaming that I play, Fortnite, Call of Duty, Madden, all types of things. Go to my Twitch channel and go follow it right now. I will greatly appreciate if you did. It would mean so much to me if you went there and followed and subscribed to my Twitch channel. Thank you. It's your boy Malcolm Locks everywhere. I appreciate it.
That's an awesome responsibility.
A great responsibility too. You know, you're just as important as a doctor. You know what I mean? That's actually, you know, doing surgery, right? So with that being said, like, how can the voices of those parents, right, and in these communities, how can they be better represented in this whole educational policy discussion? You know, we're talking about the families, we're talking about the parents. So how can they be more represented when we're talking about the policies that's affecting their children every day?
You know, the saddest thing, the most important thing, and then the saddest thing, the most important thing is parents have to take charge of their children's education. They need to know what's going on. They need to be there active when their kid is learning, because oftentimes as the kid is learning, the parent is learning. Mm-hmm. But here's the saddest part. The saddest part is questioning if parents truly know what's good for their children, because in many cases they have experienced, in some cases, parents have experienced the same failed system as their kids are experiencing. Right. So we've got to be, education choice supporters like myself. We've got to be active in helping those parents to make quality decisions so that they know what a quality education is versus what is not. And so they don't repeat the same system that continues to impact students of color and students as a whole. And so we've got to, and so everybody in the household can be educated, whether if the kid's being educated, the mom or the father can be educated. It's a systematic issue of how do we make sure and demand that it doesn't matter what your zip code is, doesn't matter where your neighborhood is, doesn't matter, what side of town you're on, everybody's getting a quality education. And if you're not getting it, you demand it because it's your civil rights.
Tech. Talk about tech. When we talking about fixing these damn schools, talk about this tech. Like give them an overarching view and then go a little bit deeper into it.
Technology is a huge opportunity because, and this is where if you don't have funding for field trips, bring the field trip to the classroom. Mm-hmm. When you talk about what are the things that kids can learn, and we've got to get teachers, and I support teachers, quality teachers, but we've got to get teachers to start having fun in the classroom with learning. People can tell when somebody's not having or not enjoying their topic. I was fortunate when I was in grade school. I had a math teacher who was awesome because he cared about his subject and he put it in real world context. And so for somebody who struggled with math, which I did, I was able to understand it because math is one of those unique things that it's difficult for two reasons. One, it's difficult because math is a building block. So you got to get the first step to get the second step to get the third step.
If you don't get it, you're going to miss it. You're going to start from scratch, right?
The other thing with math is its own language.
It is.
So once you understand the language,
you could talk to anybody in the world with math.
Because here's the irony. Kids use math, young adults use math daily. And in many cases, they don't realize in some cases there's math. And so when you talk about, the sum or the quotient, these are all languages that are foreign in our communities, but we know what it means when it's broken down.
Mm-hmm.
So all we have to do to be math experts, we created math,
mm-hmm.
is decode the content. And once we decode that content, now we can go in and understand, because the language barrier, as with anything, is off. And we can speak plainly about how do we fix an equation, or what is a fraction, or what does a derivative mean? It's a language problem. It's not an achievement problem. You just don't understand the language.
Because you missed some of those blocks at the beginning, those building blocks that you needed in order to build upon the language.
Exactly.
Because, math is essential to higher levels of other math and higher levels to other types of sciences that we need in order to really be a part. I don't want to say we just need that. We need other things too, but that's a big piece of what we need in order to be productive citizens, moving forward once we get up out of high school and go to college and whatnot.
All we need, Malcolm, as people of color, and I always say this, we need to know how to write. We need to know how to read. We need to know how to solve basic math equations. And once we have those tenets, a child can do anything. And most importantly, when we talk about exposure, I'm a big advocate of bringing resources to schools. One thing, that we have to talk about when we talk about education is the arts. And the reason I say that is because the arts soothes the savage beast, in the sense that people use the arts, whether it's music, whether it is whether it's music, or whether it is, making sure that we have something, the art, sculpting. These are the things that continue to calm people and expression. These are the things that people seek when they're trying
mm-hmm.
to express themselves. And I think those are the things that we've got to start looking at this education piece, Malcolm, with a totally different realm, with a totally different perspective of not just reading, writing, arithmetic, but what is the holistic view of how we educate a child? And it starts with the basics.
Brandon, man, listen, we could sit here and talk
heavy conversation.
This is a very, very, very heavy conversation. We could sit here and talk about it all night. We actually probably need to do a part 2.
Let's do it.
Yeah, we're going to do a part 2.
Fix the damn schools.
Yeah, fix these damn schools. This is this part 1. We'll get part 2 over to you guys soon enough. But Brandon, I appreciate you. I think I'm going to call my podcast the Principal Protocol. I think that's what I'm going to call it. So yeah, that's what we're going to do. But Brandon, appreciate you for giving me some of your time. You might be like a staple on my show because you my guy. You my guy. Me and Brandon, we were together this past weekend. Howard got a win over DSU. You know what I mean? Is that the real HU?
It's the only HU, the Mecca.
Ooh, the Mecca. that's a whole nother conversation for a whole nother day. So appreciate everybody for tapping in real quick on the podcast. I'm gonna post this up on YouTube, so you'll be able to watch this on YouTube. And Brandon, where can the folks get in touch with you?
You know what? I'll leave this. I'll leave this here. You can find me, but the most important thing is fix the damn schools. And parents, we need you out there. You are the glue that brings all this together.
And there you have it, my man Brandon Brice. I'm your boy Malcolm. Y'all know Malcolm Locks everywhere. And peace. We out.